You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Voss here. There you go. The Chris Voss here with the Chris Voss Show. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you, but doesn't judge, at least not as harshly as the rest of the world. As always, the Chris Voss Show. Refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1 on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Today, an amazing young man on the show, Bruce Henderson, joins us. He's the author of the latest book to come out, Midnight Flyboys, the American bomber crews and Allied secret agents who aided the French resistance in World War II, out November 11th, 2025. We're going to get in with him, some of his insights, some of the things he learned, developing a story, and all that good stuff. He's the author of more than 20 nonfiction books, including the #1 New York Times bestseller, and The Sea Will Tell, which was made into a highly rated TV series. His latest book, Sons of Soldiers, the story of untold story of the Jews who escaped the Nazis and returned with the U.S. Army to fight Hitler, hit the New York Times bestseller list in 2018. He's got several other books that cover military actions and all sorts of stuff that happened. Welcome to the show. How are you, Bruce?
Hey, Chris. Thanks. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, my website, brucehendersonbooks.com. Got more information about this book and my other books as well.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside your new book, please?
Well, Midnight Flyboys tells the story of what was a top secret operation that began in late 43, about 8 or 9 months before what we now know was D-Day. And the thought was that they had to quickly strengthen the French resistance forces prior to our soldiers in hitting the beaches at Normandy, because they wanted the resistance to be organized, they wanted it to be armed, they wanted it to have the communications that it needed in order to commit sabotage acts behind enemy lines to stop German reinforcements from rushing to the beachheads. And it was a rather urgent thing that Eisenhower put the orders out and said, we've got to get some of our planes involved in this. And they chose 3 squadrons of B-24 Liberators, which are known as bombers, but in this case, they became something a lot more.
And what more did they become?
Well, the bombers were trained, the pilots, I should say, were trained to fly the bombers at high altitudes in large formations. We've all seen those pictures, bombing deep inside Germany. And instead, this mission called for a plane solo missions at nighttime. They painted the planes black to try to keep them from being seen.
Wow.
And went in, had to go very low, 600, 700 feet, to drop the parachutes so they would open, and very slow so the parachutes would open properly over the target area, which was really just a little field in the middle of nowhere that was lit by a couple of lanterns by the partisans who were waiting to get these parachuted supplies. And it was also important to land some more of these Allied agents, many of them British trained, some Americans, OSS. These folks, men and women, I should say, had the expertise that the resistance people needed.
Yeah. And I guess they had weapons and whatever else they needed to create sabotage, huh?
Well, each group, and there were about 100 resistance networks in France. But, from very small to very large to organized to unorganized. And they had to be pulled together into some kind of a cohesive unit that could operate. The left needed to know what the right was doing. And this was not easy. Some of the resistance folks were communists. Some were anti-communists. Some loved de
Oh,
Gaulle. Some hated de Gaulle. Well, what Eisenhower wanted was everybody pulling in the same direction to support and assist the Allied landings on the coast of France.
there you go. We think about Normandy, but we don't hear a lot too much about these secret things. I imagine they kept it a secret, so that people weren't aware of it. Has it been kept a secret this whole time? I mean, you
Well,
finally uncovered it?
it was not declassified for 50 years
Mm,
after the war, and in fact, the reason it was, honestly, I think it was probably overclassified,
mm,
but the fact that it was an intelligence operation, OSS, which soon became the CIA right after the war. They just said no, we don't want anyone talking about how we organize this and what our strategies are. And so the guys who flew these planes, and it was so dangerous, they could not only get shot down by nighttime German fighters, radar
mhm,
equipped, they could get shot out of the sky by the ground anti-aircraft fire. They also, because they were flying so low and slow at night, could crash into a hillside, clip
mm,
trees, and go in that way.
mm.
But these guys, after they did this and the war was won and were sent home, they were told never to speak about what they had done during the
Wow.
war. And for the most part, they all took that very seriously. And in fact, I've reached out to some of the families, and many of these guys went to their graves without even telling their own kids or anybody what they had done
Wow.
in the war. And so it wasn't until about about the mid 1990s that they finally got recognition. They were given the Congressional Gold Medal, which is the highest civilian award, and to honor what they had done, and started to have reunions and meet with their buddies and talk about what they'd done. But that doesn't mean that their entire story was in one place for somebody like me to go in and read. We had
Mhm.
to piece it together, not only archivally, but through families. And unfortunately, there's only three of these fellows still alive who
Oh,
flew
wow.
these missions, and they're 99 and 100.
Oh, wow.
And so, we have to, I always reach out to the families. Do they have a suitcase in the attic that has dad or grandpa or their uncle's flight stuff? And it's amazing how many people have that kind of stuff.
Really?
And, we pull it together. Did they leave a journal? Did they leave a diary? Did they write letters that were saved? My own family, my grandmother saved letters from her youngest son in an old suitcase that I
Wow.
found when I was 10 years old in one of her, closets. And I pulled it out, and every letter, 100 of them, from the time he went into flight training until 2 days before his last mission, from which he didn't return.
Oh, man.
So there are a lot, there's a lot of out there, but you've got to go digging for it.
Did that give you this? You've written a lot of books on nonfiction history and military operations. Was that what piqued your interest, maybe, or influenced you? Was finding that? Is that
I
the case?
really think so, and certainly the last. I admit that in my career early on, I wrote true crime. That was my number one New York Times
Mm-hmm.
book. I wrote Arctic adventure. I wrote, I did a book with Joe Montana, for God's sakes. So I was
Mm.
a commercial author, but the last 5 or 6 books I've written are World War II, and I'll tell you from the first one. I just got into this. There were a lot more of those vets around. Unfortunately, they're really thinning out now. But I
Mm.
just love them. I loved going to their city, spending a few days, breaking bread with them, talking to them, and I just made. And I'm sure it goes back to that obsession, or trying to find out more about this uncle I never knew and what he did in the war. And I think that that's really brought me onto the path that I'm at now. And my plan now is to just keep with World War II and keep. And it's the younger generations that are reading it. Obviously, these
Really?
older folks. I mean, if we just had to sell it to the World War II uh, generation, there wouldn't be that many books sold. But
Yeah.
new generations are embracing this history, which is
Nice.
fabulous,
Yeah.
because there are important lessons here,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that they taught us.
Mm-hmm. There's some segments of our society that's embracing the other sides.
Well, yeah, but I mean the duty, the commitment, the mission. I mean,
Yeah.
America was pulling all together in World War II, and I
Mm-hmm.
gotta say that's the beauty of it.
In
Okay.
comedy.
Is it black and white? Is it the good against evil? And yeah, guess the good guys won.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that globe would have looked like back then if they had lost? I mean,
Yeah.
so the fact that they went to war and were willing to do that to defend democracy, I just feel it's a lesson that we should never forget, and it's something we
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't let be in vain.
Yeah, most definitely. In 1943, this was they were from the OSS, precursor to the CIA. Tell us about that and what that was about.
Well, the way that worked was the resistance forces in France all had these radios that were supplied by the OSS and by the British
Hmm.
intelligence, and they could get messages on what they needed uh, to London. And at the headquarters of the OSS in London, they would put together, it would be a shopping list. Okay, this group here, 200 miles south of Paris, needs the following ammunition for these kind of guns, a couple of bicycle tires because their couriers use bicycles and we need to get them that. And so they'd be very specific shopping lists that would then be radioed or sent to the secret airbase in England that these planes flew out of. No other activity was at this airbase. Nobody else was allowed into the base, and they
Hmm.
were then loaded into 300. Well, they were steel canisters that could hold 300 pounds of anything, supplies, ammo, bicycle tires, whatever you needed. And
Hmm.
each bomber could carry a dozen of these. And they
Hmm.
loaded them into that bomber in the bomb bay, just like a rack of bombs. And then when they got over the target, and the bombardier pressed the button, only instead of dropping bombs, he was dropping these containers, each one of which was attached to a parachute. I wanted in this book also to show what happened. How was that? Was that equipment used? And really importantly, what about those two or three agents that jumped in through the hole in the fuselage of those planes too
Hmm.
on those dark nights? Where did they go? What were their fates? What did they do? And
Yeah.
I follow several of them.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot that can happen on a night drop like that. You can fall into a tree. You can get seen by the enemy. It's quite the little effort there.
And I love the fact that a good number of these agents were women, and
Mm.
it's difficult in World War II stories, honestly, to get that many women the characters involved because they weren't generally combatants like they are today.
Hmm.
And we end up being with them at home and writing letters, and that's all right. That's important too. But I love the fact that the British and American intelligence services understood there was a real value in getting women agents on the ground there because a woman on a bicycle alone going from this village to that village carrying a secret message was on the surface at least less suspicious to the German soldiers that were
Uh,
than a guy or two guys would have been. And
yeah.
they usually didn't search them for pass. What do
Oh
you have a
yeah.
pass or do you not have a pass? And so the women were, and they were just as brave. They were in there in the fighting as well. One of them I cover, a woman named Nancy Wake, and one of the partisans she fought with later said that she was the most feminine woman I'd ever met. And then when the fighting started, she fought like five men.
Wow. There you go. Women were in World War II a bit of a not only distraction, but they got a pass. We've had some authors on that talked about the Jewish slums in Poland and stuff like that, and the Jewish women would, kind of flirt with the guards who would contain the slum, and they would be let out and they would go do excursions, missions, sometimes assassinations, sometimes activities of blowing stuff up, getting food, getting guns, and sometimes they would bring contraband back to the Jewish slums, and by flirting with the guards would do you want me to carry that for you? And they're literally carrying bags of guns.
I know, that's it. And that was
It
exactly
was
what these female agents were doing.
quite funny.
And of course, let's not forget we had the Wasps, the women air service pilots who in the United
Oh,
States
yeah.
were delivering. I mean, they were flying the biggest bombers and the fastest fighters we had, delivering them, but weren't in combat doing it, and that was, that was not their fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So, interesting story. How did you find this? What made it appeal to you? What struck you in why this should be
Well,
written?
I never knew. I had never heard of this. I've written
Hmm.
what 6 World War II books, and I never heard of this operation.
Hmm.
It's amazing that 80 years after that war, we're still things are popping up that are untold. Honestly,
Hmm.
never reported. I had a relative of one of the pilots, and it was called Operation Carpetbaggers. One of the carpetbagger pilots who was deceased, but the family found in an attic, in a trunk, his some of his stuff, just like I did in my uncle's suitcase, and
Wow.
this relative had read one of my other books and brought it to my attention and said, "Would I be interested in this?" Well, that really piqued my interest.
Mm, there you go. And anything more that you have going on, maybe for future books, maybe you're working on?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm actually looking at doing the book about my uncle and what
Mm,
happened to him. And it turns out I've learned over the years, and I did luckily get into some of the reunions with some of the pilots that flew with him. Unfortunately, they're all gone now. But it was a legendary group of P-51 Mustang pilots flying out of England. They were uh, the first long-range fighters to be able to escort those bombers all the way to Berlin, and they kind of changed the air war in Europe. And I'm planning to take that on for my next book. I'm going from bomber pilots, parachuting supplies and agents, now to fighter pilots that were the P-51 was largely responsible for defeating the Luftwaffe in the skies, and
mm.
I think that'll be an exciting story.
There you go. That definitely should be exciting. When I was a kid, I used to love the air battles and stuff, and stories of the Red Baron, and all that.
Yeah.
And it used to be fun to build the planes, the little biplanes or whatever they were. And so, yeah, I mean, I think people are still nostalgic for that time and era, and it was definitely a hell of a time of bravery. I like how I believe you published the book on Veterans Day, right?
Yeah, that was really
Yeah,
something. I got to say, my
yeah.
publisher a couple of years ago, of course, when I was still working on the book, he said, we could do it on Father's Day or Veterans Day. And I said, let's do Veterans Day.
Great homage. Yeah.
That's a good hook. And I've got some things to say about those vets. And by the way, it's a little late, day late, but happy Veterans Day to every
Hmm.
veteran. And I mean, whether you were in a war or not. I served. I was in the Navy, and always get calls from my buddies wishing me Happy Veterans Day. So I say the same to everybody else.
Yeah, we had a wonderful young man on the show. He's not quite young, but that's how we roll. On the show yesterday, and he was the first show, and he came in wearing his hat from his service. And I don't know what wars he fought in or whatever, but I don't think he would have been World War II. I should have asked him, but he
Maybe
asked.
Vietnam.
He goes, it's yeah, maybe. But he had like 24 years of service,
Mm.
and he asked me. He goes, it's Veterans Day today. You mind if I wear my hat for just the first few minutes of the show, if that's okay? I'm like, sir, you can wear your hat all damn show long if you want. You,
Well, it's not that you
you
don't
were
wear a
in the
hat.
right to wear that hat wherever the hell you want. You
You've
can
earned
keep it
it.
on in church, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. It was such a great time, and well, I mean, I don't know that it was a great time. I mean, there was death and hell and all that goes on during war, but it was such an interesting time to see the bravery coming together as Americans fighting against a common enemy, recognizing what was evil and wrong in the world. And I mean, the one thing man can learn from his history is man never learns from his history, and thereby we go round and round, and we really got to knock this shit off. Just seeing people I mean, embracing Nazism, embracing Germanyism,
Yeah.
authoritarianism, fascism, is really disturbing to see that. And you're seeing it in open context and communications and chatter with people. In fact, there's a huge civil war in the GOP going on right now in 2025 between the Nazi faction and two other factions inside. You know, some feel Trump's not being Nazi enough. It's kind of an interesting thing that's going on in our world. So we'll see how that all turns out. We may get to find out what would have happened if Nazism had invaded and taken over America. But
an earlier book I did was called Sons and Soldiers, and it was about the Ritchie boys. Have you heard of them?
no,
60 Minutes picked it up after the book came out. These were a group of German-born Jews who, as boys in the 1930s, their families sent them out. And some of them ended up in England. A lot of them came to the United States and lived with, and some of their families never got out, lived with relatives or whatnot. And then when the war started, they were young men, but they were Germans. Even though they were Jews, they were Germans, and they were considered enemy aliens, and they weren't suited for military service, so the government thought. Well, then very quickly we got into the war, and we realized we needed guys with the skills of the German language to be able to interrogate and interview prisoners of war that we were taking. So where do we find these guys? Oh, we have them here. We're not using them. So they brought them into a camp. They made them naturalized citizens. They trained them. They put them in the army, and they sent them out on Ritchie boy teams. It was Camp Ritchie, which is where they were trained in Maryland, and small teams that were attached to even the frontline combat units, because that was really the best place to talk to and get information from a captured prisoner when they're afraid, hungry, not sure what's going to happen to them. And so sitting down, and there were a number of them, this was in 2017, still alive, and I got to go out and talk to them, interview. And I'm telling you, it was a little scary when I heard what was happening. You know, of course, the parallels with what was happening in Germany in the early mid 30s. I mean, they really thought this was a fad; it would go away. I mean, Germany had a pretty solid republic at the time when Hitler came, and you know, people just thought, oh, okay, this isn't going to last very long. And how it turned really on a dime so quickly and became this really cancerous, evil empire.
Yeah, there you go. Well, anything more we want to tease out about the book before we go?
No, I'm good. I think it's I write narrative nonfiction, and what that means is it reads like a novel, but it's all true. And I think you'll find it action packed and have some very colorful characters in it.
There you go. There you go. And they were colorful characters back then. Those people were just salt of the earth. So there you go. Well, thank you for sharing your story and their story as well, Bruce. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And where can people find out more about you on the interwebs?
BruceHendersonBooks.com. A lot of information on the book and links to buy the book, which is available anywhere books are sold.
There you go. Folks, order it up wherever books are sold. Midnight Flyboys, the American bomber crews and allied secret agents who aided the French resistance in World War II. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTok, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out.